Hello, friends, and welcome to tonight's sleep story. This evening, I shall read for you two short stories, The Magic Swan and The Dirty Shepherdess. The reading will be followed by the sound of a calmly babbling brook for about an hour to help you drift to sleep. Before we begin, if you enjoy this reading, I would encourage you to subscribe so you will be notified of upcoming sleep stories. If you like, leave me a comment below. I always like to hear from you. It is time to unwind. Find a place where you can relax. Settle into that place and make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. As you exhale, you can feel yourself calm down. There's nothing of concern now. Your day is done. Take another breath. And now, let us listen to these stories. The Magic Swan. There were once upon a time 3 brothers, of whom the eldest was called Jacob, the second Frederick, and the youngest Peter. This youngest brother was made a regular butt of by the other 2, and they treated him shamefully. If anything went wrong with their affairs, Peter had to bear the blame and put things right for them. And he had to endure all this ill treatment because he was weak and delicate and couldn't defend himself against his stronger brothers. The poor creature had a most terrifying life of it in every way, and day and night he pondered how he could make it better. One day, when he was in the wood gathering sticks and crying bitterly, a little old woman came up to him and asked him what was the matter. And he told her all his troubles. "Come, my good youth," said the old dame, when he had finished his tale of woe. "Isn't the world wide enough? Why don't you set out and try your fortune somewhere else?" Peter took her words to heart and left his father's house early one morning to try his fortune in the wide world, as the old woman had advised him. But he felt very bitterly parting from the home where he had been born, and where he had at least passed a short but happy childhood. And sitting down on a hill, he gazed once more fondly on his native place. Suddenly the little old woman stood before him, and, tapping him on the shoulder, said, "So far good, my boy, but what do you mean to do now?" Peter was at a loss what to answer, for so far he had always thought that fortune would drop into his mouth like a ripe cherry. The old woman, who guessed his thoughts, laughed kindly and said, "I'll tell you what you must do, for I've taken a fancy to you, and I'm sure you won't forget me when you've made your fortune." Peter promised faithfully he wouldn't, and the old woman continued. "This evening at sunset, go to yonder pear tree. which you see growing at the crossroads. Underneath it you will find a man lying asleep, and a beautiful large swan will be fastened to the tree close to him. You must be careful not to waken the man, but you must unfasten the swan and take it away with you. You will find that everyone will fall in love with its beautiful plumage, and you must allow anyone who likes it to pull out a feather. But as soon as the swan feels as much as a finger on it, it will scream out, and then you must say, "Swan, hold fast." Then the hand of the person who has touched the bird will be held as in a vice, and nothing will set it free, unless you touch it with this little stick, which I will make you a present of. When you have captured a whole lot of people in this way, lead your train straight on with you. You will come to a big town where a princess lives who has never been known to laugh. If you can only make her laugh, your fortune is made. Then I beg you won't forget your old friend. Peter promised again that he wouldn't, and at sunset he went to the tree the old woman had mentioned. The man lay there fast asleep, and a large, beautiful swan was fastened to the tree beside him by a red cord. Peter loosened the bird and led it away with him without disturbing the bird's master. He walked on with the swan for some time, and came at last to a building yard where some men were busily at work. They were all lost in admiration of the bird's beautiful plumage, and one forward youth, who was covered with clay from head to foot, called out, "Oh, if I'd only one of those feathers, how happy I should be." "Pull one out then," said Peter kindly, and the youth seized one from the bird's tail. Instantly the swan screamed, and Peter called out, "Swan, hold fast." And do what he could, the poor youth couldn't get his hand away. The more he howled, the more the others laughed, till a girl who had been washing clothes in the neighboring stream hurried up to see what was the matter. When she saw the poor boy fastened to the swan, she felt so sorry for him that she stretched out her hand to free him. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," called out Peter, and the girl was caught also. When Peter had gone on for a bit with his captives, they met a chimney sweep who laughed loudly over the extraordinary troop and asked the girl what she was doing. "Oh, dearest John," replied the girl, "give me your hand and set me free from this cursed young man." "Most certainly I will, if that's all you want," replied the sweep, and gave the girl his hand. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," said Peter, and the man was added to their number. They soon came to a village where a fair was being held. A traveling circus was giving a performance, and the clown was just doing his tricks. He opened his eyes wide with amazement when he saw the remarkable trio fastened onto the swan's tail. "Have you gone raving mad, Sweep?" he asked, as well as he could for laughing. "It's no laughing matter," the Sweep replied. "This wench has got so tight hold of me that I feel as if I were glued to her. Do set me free, like a good clown, and I'll do you a good turn some day." Without a moment's hesitation, the clown grasped the outstretched hand. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," called out Peter, and the clown became the fourth of the party. Now in the front row of the spectators sat the respected and popular mayor of the village, who was much put out by what he considered nothing but a foolish trick. So much annoyed was he that he seized the clown by the hand and tried to tear him away in order to hand him over to the police. Then the bird screamed, and Peter called out, "Swan, hold fast," and the dignified mayor shared the fate of his predecessors. The mayoress, a long, thin stick of a woman, enraged at the insult done to her husband, seized his free arm and tore at it with all her might, with the only result that she too was forced to swell the procession. After this, no one else had any wish to join them. Soon Peter saw the towers of the capital in front of him. Just before entering it, a glittering carriage came out to meet him, in which was seated a young lady as beautiful as the day, but with a very solemn and serious expression. But no sooner had she perceived the motley crowd fastened to the swan's tail than she burst into a loud fit of laughter, in which she was joined by all her servants and ladies-in-waiting. "The princess has laughed at last," they all cried with joy. She stepped out of her carriage to look more closely at the wonderful sight, and laughed again over the capers the poor captives cut. She ordered her carriage to be turned round and drove slowly back into the town, never taking her eyes off Peter and his procession. When the king heard the news that his daughter had actually laughed, he was more than delighted, and had Peter and his marvelous train brought before him. He laughed himself when he saw them till the tears rolled down his cheeks. "My good friend," he said to Peter, "do you know what I promised the person who succeeded in making the princess laugh?" "No, I don't," said Peter. "Then I'll tell you," answered the king, 1,000 gold crowns or a piece of land. Which will you choose?" Peter decided in favor of the land. Then he touched the youth, the girl, the sweep, the clown, the mayor, and the mayoress with his little stick, and they were all free again, and ran away home as if a fire were burning behind them. And their flight, as you may imagine, gave rise to renewed merriment. Then the princess felt moved to stroke the swan, at the same time admiring its plumage. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," called out Peter, and so he won the princess for his bride. But the swan flew up into the air and vanished in the blue horizon. Peter now received a duchy as a present, and became a very great man indeed. But he did not forget the little old woman who had been the cause of all his good fortune, and appointed her as head housekeeper to him and his royal bride in their magnificent castle. The Dirty Shepherdess. Once upon a time there lived a king who had 2 daughters, and he loved them with all his heart. When they grew up, he was suddenly seized with a wish to know if they, on their part, truly loved him, and he made up his mind that he would give his kingdom to whichever best proved her devotion. So he called the elder princess and said to her, "How much do you love me?" "As the apple of my eye," answered she. "Ah!" exclaimed the king, kissing her tenderly as he spoke. "You are indeed a good daughter." Then he sent for the younger and asked her how much she loved him. "I look upon you, my father," she answered, "as I look upon salt in my food." But the king did not like her words and ordered her to quit the court and never again to appear before him. The poor princess went sadly up to her room and began to cry. But when she was reminded of her father's commands, she dried her eyes and made a bundle of her jewels and her best dresses, and hurriedly left the castle where she was born. She walked straight along the road in front of her, without knowing very well where she was going, or what was to become of her, for she had never been shown how to work, and all she had learned consisted of a few household rules and receipts of dishes which her mother had taught her long ago. And as she was afraid that no housewife would want to engage a girl with such a pretty face, she determined to make herself as ugly as she could. She therefore took off the dress that she was wearing and put on some horrible old rags belonging to a beggar, all torn and covered with mud. After that she smeared mud all over her hands and face, and shook her hair into a great tangle. Having thus changed her appearance, she went about offering herself as a goose girl or shepherdess. But the farmers' wives would have nothing to say to such a dirty maiden, and sent her away with a morsel of bread for charity's sake. After walking for a great many days, without being able to find any work, she came to a large farm, where they were in want of a shepherdess, and engaged her gladly. One day, when she was keeping her sheep in a lonely tract of land, she suddenly felt a wish to dress herself in her robes of splendor. She washed herself carefully in the stream, and, as she always carried her bundle with her, it was easy to shake off her rags and transform herself in a few moments into a great lady. The king's son, who had lost his way out hunting, perceived this lovely damsel a long way off, and wished to look at her closer. But as soon as the girl saw what he was at, she fled into the wood as swiftly as a bird. The prince ran after her, but as he was running he caught his foot in the root of a tree and fell, and when he got up again, she was nowhere to be seen. When she was quite safe, she put on her rags again and smeared over her face and hands. However, the young prince, who was both hot and thirsty, found his way to the farm to ask for a drink of cider, and he inquired the name of the beautiful lady that kept the sheep. At this, everyone began to laugh, for they said that the shepherdess was one of the ugliest and dirtiest creatures under the sun. The prince thought some witchcraft must be at work, and he hastened away before the return of the shepherdess, who became, that evening, the butt of everybody's jests. But the king's son thought often of the lovely maiden whom he had only seen for a moment, though she seemed to him much more fascinating than any lady of the court. At last he dreamed of nothing else, and grew thinner day by day, till his parents inquired what was the matter, promising to do all they could to make him as happy as he once was. He dared not tell them the truth, lest they should laugh at him, so he only said that he should like some bread baked by the kitchen girl in the distant farm. Although the wish appeared rather odd, they hastened to fulfill it, and the farmer was told the request of the king's son. The maiden showed no surprise at receiving such an order, but merely asked for some flour, salt, and water, and also that she might be left alone in a little room adjoining the oven, where the kneading trough stood. Before beginning her work, she washed herself carefully, and even put on her rings, but while she was baking, one of her rings slid into the dough. When she had finished, she dirtied herself again, and let the lumps of dough stick to her fingers, so that she became as ugly as before. The loaf, which was a very little one, was brought to the king's son, who ate it with pleasure. But in cutting it, he found the ring of the princess, and declared to his parents that he would marry the girl whom that ring fitted. So the king made a proclamation through his whole kingdom, and ladies came from afar to lay claim to the honor. But the ring was so tiny that even those who had the smallest hands could only get it on their little finger. In a short time, all the maidens of the kingdom, including the peasant girls, had tried on the ring, and the king was just about to announce that their efforts had been in vain, when the prince observed that he had not yet seen the shepherdess. They sent to fetch her, and she arrived, covered with rags, but with her hands cleaner than usual, so that she could easily slip on the ring. The king's son declared that he would fulfill his promise, and when his parents mildly remarked that the girl was only a keeper of sheep, and a very ugly one too, the maiden boldly said that she was born a princess, and that if they would only give her some water and leave her alone in a room for a few minutes, she would show that she could look as well as anyone in fine clothes. They did what she asked, and when she entered in a magnificent dress, she looked so beautiful that all saw she must be a princess in disguise. The king's son recognized the charming damsel of whom he had once caught a glimpse, and, flinging himself at her feet, asked if she would marry him. The princess then told her story, and said that it would be necessary to send an ambassador to her father to ask his consent and to invite him to the wedding. The princess's father, who had never ceased to repent his harshness towards his daughter, had sought her through the land, but as no one could tell him anything of her, he supposed her dead. Therefore, it was with great joy he heard that she was living, and that the king's son asked her in marriage, and he quitted his kingdom with his elder daughter, so as to be present at the ceremony. By the orders of the bride, they only served her father at the wedding breakfast bread without salt, and meat without seasoning. Seeing him make faces and eat very little, his daughter, who sat beside him, inquired if his dinner was not to his taste. "No," he replied, "the dishes are carefully cooked and sent up, but they are all so dreadfully tasteless. Did not I tell you, my father, that salt was the best thing in life? And yet, when I compared you to salt, to show you how much I loved you, you thought slightingly of me, and you chased me from your presence." The king embraced his daughter, and allowed that he had been wrong to misinterpret her words. Then, for the rest of the wedding feast, they gave him bread made with salt and dishes with seasoning, and he said they were the very best he had ever eaten.